Eli Harmon dropped to his knees in the snow, hands shaking as he pulled the frozen child against his chest. She wasn't breathing right. Maybe not breathing at all. He pressed his ear to her mouth. Waited. Felt the faintest whisper of air against his cheek. Still alive. Barely. He didn't know her name. Didn't know she was worth more money than he'd see in 10 lifetimes. Didn't know that saving her would cost him everything and give him back even more. If you want to see how this story ends, subscribe to our channel and follow along to the very last word. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We love seeing how far these stories travel. The child weighed nothing. That was Eli Harmon's first thought as he lifted her from the snowbank. Lighter than a saddle. Lighter than the guilt he carried every day. She hung limp in his arms, small body rigid with cold, and he pressed 2 fingers against her throat. Pulse. Faint, but there. Hold on, he said, though she couldn't hear him. You hold on. His horse Dusty stood patient in the driving snow. Eli wrapped the girl inside his coat, mounted one-handed, and rode hard for the cabin. The blizzard had come out of nowhere. Clear morning then, by noon, the sky turned mean. He'd been checking the south fence when he saw the shape in the white. Thought it was a dead coyote at first. Wasn't. The cabin appeared through the snow like a ghost. Eli kicked open the door, carried the child to the bed by the cold stove, laid her down gentle. Her lips were blue. Fingers curled like bird claws. Hair frozen stiff against her skull. He built the fire fast, hands steady from years of practice, then went back to her. Peeled off the wet clothes. Fine clothes, he noticed, too fine for out here. Wrapped her in every blanket he had. Rubbed her hands between her feet, trying to push blood back into places the cold had stolen it from. Come on, he muttered. Come on, girl. Nothing. He kept rubbing, kept talking, didn't know what else to do. An hour passed. 2. The fire roared. The cabin grew warm, then hot. Sweat ran down Eli's face, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Because stopping meant she was gone, and he'd already let too many people go. Then her fingers twitched. Eli froze. Watched. Her hand moved again, small, confused. Her eyelids fluttered. That's it, he said, voice rough. That's right. Come back. Her eyes opened. Blue-green, too big for her thin face, full of fear he recognized. The fear of waking up and not knowing if you're safe. You're all right, Eli said, pulling his hands back slow. Nobody here's going to hurt you. She stared at him. Didn't speak. Didn't move. There's water if you want it. Food when you're ready. He stood, gave her space. I'm Eli. This is my place. You're safe. Still nothing. He'd expected that. Trauma did strange things to the tongue. He crossed to the stove, put the kettle on, kept his back to her so she wouldn't feel watched. Behind him, he heard her shift. The blankets rustled. A small, ragged breath. Then so quiet he almost missed it. Where's my mama? Eli's hand stopped on the kettle. He turned slow. The girl was sitting up now, blankets pulled to her chin, staring at him with those 2 big eyes. Don't know, Eli said honestly. Found you alone in the snow about 3 miles east. There wasn't nobody else. Her face crumpled. Not crying, worse than crying. That hollow look of someone who already knew the answer, but had to ask anyway. They came at night, she whispered. Men with guns. My father told us to run. Eli's gut clenched. Your father. He's dead. Flat. Empty. Mama too. I saw. The kettle whistled. Eli took it off. The heat poured water into a tin cup, brought it to her. She took it with shaking hands, drank deep. What's your name? He asked. She looked at the cup, at the fire, at anything but him. You don't gotta tell me if... Grace! The word came out small, like she wasn't sure she still had a right to it. Grace, Eli repeated. All right, Grace. You rest now. We'll figure the rest tomorrow. She shook her head. I can't stay here. You ain't got much choice. Storm's bad. Won't clear for a day, maybe two. But they might come back. The men who... Her voice broke. They might follow me. Let them try. Something in his tone made her look up. Eli stood by the stove, arms crossed, face hard. He wasn't a big man, but there was something in the way he held himself. Something that said he'd seen worse than bad men in blizzards. I got a rifle, he said. I got walls. And I got no patience for anyone who hurts children. You understand? Grace nodded slowly. Good. Now sleep. You need it. He turned away, busied himself with the fire. Behind him, he heard her settle back into the blankets, heard her breathing slowly even out. When he finally looked, she was asleep. Eli sank into the chair by the window, stared out at the white nothing. His hands were still shaking. Not from cold. From something else. Something he'd buried 6 years ago under a cottonwood tree on the hill. Don't he told himself? She's just a child passing through. You'll take her to town when the snow clears, that's all. But even as he thought it, he knew it wasn't true. The second day, she still wouldn't eat. Eli set bread on the table. Salt pork. Coffee with too much sugar. She looked at it, looked at him, shook her head. You got to eat something. I'm not hungry. Don't care if you're hungry. Body needs fuel. Grace pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. She'd been sitting in the same spot since dawn, watching the window like she expected monsters to come through it. My mother always said a lady never eats until she's invited. Eli raised an eyebrow. A lady. That's what she called me. Well. He pushed the plate closer. Consider yourself invited. She didn't smile, but something shifted in her face. She reached for the bread, tore off a small piece, chewed mechanical. That's good, Eli said. Keep going. You're not eating. I ate already. No, you didn't. I've been watching. Smart kid. Too smart for comfort. Eli sat down across from her, took a piece of bread for himself. They ate in silence. Outside, the storm had died to a whisper, but the snow was piled high. Another day before the roads cleared, maybe two. Where were you headed? Eli asked. Before it happened. Grace's jaw tightened. Cheyenne. My father had business there. What kind of business? Railroad business. He owned shares in the Northern Pacific. She said it like she was reciting a lesson. 23% controlling interest. That's what the lawyers always said. Railroad money. Eli's hands went still on the bread. He was going to meet with the territorial governor. Grace continued, oblivious to the shift in his expression. Something about land rights. I wasn't supposed to listen, but I heard him talking to Mama. He said there were men who didn't want the meeting to happen. What men? I don't know. He never said names. Her voice dropped. But they found us anyway. Eli was quiet a long moment. Railroad money meant lawyers. Lawyers meant law. Law meant this girl wasn't just a lost child, she was property. Valuable property that someone would come looking for. Your father, he said carefully. He have family back east. Someone who'd be looking for you. Grace's face went blank. My grandfather. In Denver. But he's... She stopped. Looked at her hands. He didn't like my father. Said he married beneath his station, whatever that means. And your mama's people. Dead, all of them. Fever when I was little. So she had no one. No one except a grandfather who'd written off his daughter and a fortune in railroad stock that made her a target. Eli pushed back from the table. I'm going to check the horses. You stay inside, understand? Don't open that door for anyone. Where would I go? The question hit harder than she knew. Just stay inside, he said, and went out into the cold. Joseph Two Rivers was waiting by the barn. Eli didn't startle. He'd stopped startling at Joseph years ago. The man moved like smoke, appeared when you needed him, vanished when you didn't. Heard you got a house guest, Joseph said. News travels. Saw the small tracks by your door. Saw the smoke from your chimney burning all night. Joseph's dark eyes missed nothing. Who is she? Don't know yet. Found her in the snow yesterday. Parents are dead. Wagon massacre. I saw the wreckage 3 days ago east of the pass. 6 bodies. Burned wagons. Army should have found it by now. Eli's jaw tightened. Anyone asking questions? Not yet. But they will. Wagon like that, bodies like those, someone important died. That means someone's going to want answers. Joseph paused. And you've got the only survivor. Eli said nothing. You thinking about keeping her? I'm thinking about getting her to town when the road's clear. That's all. That's so. Joseph's voice was mild, but his eyes weren't. Same way you were thinking about getting through winter alone. Same way you've been thinking for 6 years. Don't start. Eli. I said don't. Silence. Just the wind and the creak of cold wood. She's scared, Eli said finally. She's been through hell. She needs someone to look after her until the proper folks come. And if the proper folks don't come, they will. Joseph shook his head slow. You don't even hear yourself, do you? 6 years you've been up here punishing yourself for something that wasn't your fault. Pushing away everyone who tries to get close. And now this child falls into your lap, and you're already planning how to get rid of her. That ain't. She needs a home, Eli, not a stopping point. I ain't equipped to give her a home. Why? Because Martha's gone. Because Samuel's gone. Joseph stepped closer, voice dropping. Because you think if you let yourself care about someone again, you might lose them too. Eli's fists clenched. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I lost a wife. Lost a daughter to the reservation schools. Lost my whole people's land to treaties that meant nothing. You think you're the only one who knows grief? Joseph's eyes were hard. Difference is, I didn't let it make me a coward. The word hung between them. Coward. Eli's jaw worked. He wanted to swing, to shout, to do something with the rage building in his chest. Instead, he turned away. Just tell me if anyone comes asking, he said. That's all I need. That's not all you need, but it's all you'll take. Joseph's voice was quieter now. I'll keep watch on the pass. If riders come, I'll let you know. Eli nodded once, didn't look back. Walked to the cabin through snow that came up past his knees. Inside, Grace was standing at the window. She turned when he entered, face pale. There was a man, she said, talking to you by the barn. Joseph, he's a friend. Are you sure? Eli stopped. Looked at her. Really looked. This small girl with 2 old eyes already learning to distrust everyone. Yeah, he said. I'm sure. She didn't look convinced, but she nodded and went back to the bed. Pulled the blanket over her head. Disappeared. Eli sat by the fire staring at the flames, trying not to think about what Joseph had said. Coward. The word burned worse than the heat. The 3rd day, she started cleaning. Eli came in from morning chores to find Grace on her knees by the hearth, scrubbing the stone with a rag that used to be his only good shirt. What are you doing? She looked up startled. Cleaning. I can see that. Why? Her face flushed. It was dirty. I wanted to help. Eli's chest tightened. He knew what this was, had seen it in stray dogs and broken horses, the desperate need to prove usefulness to earn the right to stay. You don't got to do that, he said. I want to. Grace, please. Her voice cracked. Please, just let me do something. I can't just sit here. I can't just think about... She couldn't finish. The rag dropped from her hands. Her shoulders started shaking. Eli stood frozen. He didn't know how to do this, hadn't comforted anyone in 6 years, hadn't touched another person except to shake hands or throw punches. But she was crying. This small broken girl was crying on his floor, and something in him, something he'd thought was dead, moved without his permission. He crossed the room, knelt beside her, put his hand on her shoulder, awkward, uncertain. "It's all right," he said. "You're all right." "I'm not." She looked up at him, tears streaming. "I'm not all right. I'll never be all right again. They killed my mama. They killed my father. They burned everything. And I just ran. I ran, and I hid, and I didn't even try to help them. There wasn't nothing you could have done. You don't know that." "I do." Eli's voice was harder than he meant. "I know exactly what it's like to not be there when it matters. To wake up every day wondering what you could have done different." Grace went still. "You do?" "Yeah, I do." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "What happened?" Eli hesitated. He didn't talk about this, not to anyone, not even Joseph. But this girl was looking at him like she needed to know she wasn't alone, and he couldn't refuse her that. "I had a wife," he said slowly. "Martha, and a son, Samuel. He was 4. "Where are they?" "On the hill, under the big cottonwood." Grace's breath caught. "They died. Scarlet fever, winter of '76. I was gone selling horses to the army. Was supposed to be back in 2 days. Took me 8 because of the snow." His voice went hollow. "By the time I got home, they'd been gone for 3 days. Neighbor had buried them. Couldn't wait any longer." "You didn't get to say goodbye." "No, I didn't." Silence. The fire cracked. Outside, wind rattled the shutters. "I didn't get to say goodbye either," Grace whispered. "Mama told me to run, so I ran. And when I looked back..." She stopped. "I should have stayed. Maybe I could have..." "No." Eli's hand tightened on her shoulder. Don't ever think that. Your mama told you to run because she wanted you to live. That was her choice, her gift. You don't dishonor that by wishing you'd died too." "But, listen to me." He turned her face toward him, made her meet his eyes. "You surviving, that's not something to be ashamed of. It's something to carry. You carry them with you. Their memory, their love. That's how they stay alive." Grace stared at him. "Is that what you do with your wife and son?" Eli's throat closed. "I try. But you still feel guilty. Every day. Does it ever stop?" He thought about lying. Thought about telling her it got easier that time, healed all the comfortable things people said when they didn't know what else to offer. Instead, he told the truth. "No, it doesn't stop. But you learn to carry it. You learn to walk with it until it becomes part of you. And somewhere along the way, you realize that carrying it is how you keep them close." Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then she leaned against him, small head resting against his chest, and Eli felt something crack open inside him that he'd kept locked for 6 years. He put his arms around her, held on. "I'm tired," she whispered. "I'm so tired of being scared." "I know. Rest now." "Will you stay?" He should have said no. Should have set boundaries, kept distance, protected himself from what was coming. Instead, he said, "Yeah, I'll stay." She fell asleep like that, curled against him on the cabin floor. Eli sat there until his legs went numb, until the fire burned down to embers, until the afternoon light turned gold and then gray. When he finally moved, lifting her to the bed, tucking blankets around her, she murmured something in her sleep. "Daddy." Eli froze. She was dreaming. Didn't mean anything. Probably calling for her real father, the one buried on a road somewhere east. But his hands shook as he pulled away, and his eyes burned with something he hadn't felt in a very long time. That night Joseph came back. Eli met him on the porch door, closed voice low. "What is it?" Riders in town. 3 of them. City clothes, fancy horses. Asking about a missing girl. Eli's blood went cold. Law. One of them might be. Wearing a badge anyway. The other 2 look like lawyers. How long before they come out here? Tomorrow, maybe. Day after if the snow holds. But they're asking about the wagon massacre. About survivors. Joseph paused. About a little girl with red-brown hair and eyes like her mama's. Eli glanced back at the cabin. Through the window, he could see Grace's shape in the bed, small and still. "What are you going to do?" Joseph asked. Eli didn't answer. He stared at the horizon, at the mountains cutting black against the stars, and felt the weight of a choice he wasn't ready to make. "I don't know," he said finally. "I don't know what I'm going to do." But even as he said it, he felt his hands curl into fists. Nobody was taking that girl. Nobody. 4 days passed. Grace started talking more. Not about her parents, not about that night, but small things. Books she'd read, songs her mother used to sing, the way her father smelled like tobacco and leather after long trips. Eli listened. That was all he knew how to do. "He promised to teach me to ride," Grace said one morning sitting by the fire while Eli mended a bridle. "A real horse, not a pony. He said when I turned 10 he'd buy me a mare of my own." "What kind?" "A bay, with white socks." She pulled her knees to her chest. "He'd already picked her out. I saw the letter from the breeder." Eli's hand stilled on the leather. "Sounds like he loved you a lot." "He did." Grace's voice dropped. "That's why he told us to run, because he loved us more than himself." The words sat heavy between them. Eli knew that weight, had carried it for 6 years. "My father," he said slowly, "used to say love wasn't about the big moments. It was about showing up, every day, even when it was hard." "Did he show up for you? Every day until he died?" Grace looked at him. "And your wife, did you show up for her?" The question cut deep. Eli set down the bridle, stared at his hands. "I tried, but when it mattered most," he shook his head. "I wasn't there." "That's not your fault." "Feels like it is." "It's not." Grace's voice was fierce now. "You didn't choose to be gone. The snow kept you. That's different from leaving on purpose." Eli looked at her, this small girl defending him against himself. "When'd you get so wise?" "Mama always said I had an old soul." Grace's lip trembled. "She said it was because I listened more than I talked." She was right. They sat in silence. The fire crackled. Wind pushed against the walls. And something between them shifted, settled, became real. Then Eli heard hoofbeats. He was on his feet before Grace could blink, hand reaching for the rifle above the door. "Stay here, away from the window." "Who is it?" "Don't know yet, just stay." He stepped onto the porch, rifle loose at his side. 2 riders coming up the trail, not Joseph. These men rode different, stiff, uncomfortable in the saddle, city folk. They stopped 20 feet out. One was older, gray-haired, spectacles catching weak sunlight. The other was younger, hard-faced, wearing a deputy star on his coat. "Mr. Harmon." The older man's voice carried across the cold air. "Who's asking?" "Henry Crawford Price. I'm an attorney representing the Whitfield estate out of Denver." He gestured to his companion. "This is Deputy Marshal Silas Reed." Eli's grip tightened on the rifle. "Long way from Denver. We're searching for a missing child. Grace Margaret Whitfield, age 8. Her family was attacked on the Territorial Road 2 weeks ago. We have reason to believe she may have survived." "That's so?" Price's eyes narrowed. "We've spoken to people in town. A woman at the general store said you came through recently with a young girl. Dark hair, blue-green eyes, approximately 8 years old." Damn Agnes McBride and her helpful tongue. "I come through town regular," Eli said. "Lots of folks do." "Mr. Harmon." Price's voice hardened. "I'm not here to play games. That child is the sole heir to the Whitfield fortune. 23% controlling interest in the Northern Pacific Railroad, property holdings in 3 territories, a trust fund worth more than most men see in 10 lifetimes. Sounds valuable. She's not valuable. She's a person who needs proper care, proper education, proper protection. And you're offering that? The estate is. Her grandfather, William Whitfield, has been named temporary guardian by the Denver courts. He sent me to retrieve her. Eli remembered what Grace had said. He didn't like my father. Said he married beneath his station. What if she don't want to go? Price blinked. I'm sorry. You heard me. What if the girl don't want to go with you? What if she's already got a place where she feels safe? Deputy Reed's hand moved toward his gun. You admitting you have her? I ain't admitting nothing. I'm asking a question. Price raised a hand, stopping his companion. Mr. Harmon, I understand this situation is complicated. If you have information about Grace Whitfield's whereabouts, there's a substantial reward, $500. Enough to pay off that mortgage I understand you're carrying. The mention of the mortgage hit like a slap. They'd done their research, knew exactly where to push. I don't know anything about any missing girl, Eli said. Now I'd appreciate it if you left my property. Price studied him for a long moment. We'll be staying in town, at the boarding house. If your memory improves. He reached into his coat, pulled out a card, held it out. Eli didn't take it. Price set it on the porch rail. 1 week, Mr. Harmon. Then I'm coming back with a full search warrant and every deputy in the territory. And if that girl is here, if you've been hiding her. He let the threat hang. Obstruction of justice. Kidnapping. Those are federal charges. They turned their horses, rode back toward town. Eli watched until they disappeared, then went inside. Grace was pressed against the far wall, face white. They're looking for me. Yeah. They want to take me to my grandfather. Seems like it. I won't go. Her voice shook. I won't. He hated my father. He told Mama she was dead to him when she got married. He didn't even come to the wedding. Didn't send a letter when I was born. He's not my family. He's just... She stopped, choking on the words. Eli crossed to her, knelt, so they were eye to eye. Hey, listen to me. I won't go with them. I'll run. I'll hide in the mountains. Grace, listen. She stopped, tears streaming. Nobody's taking you anywhere. You understand, nobody. But the law? Hang the law. The word surprised them both. Eli hadn't meant to say them, hadn't meant to commit to anything. But seeing her like this, terrified and alone, something in him snapped into place. You mean it? Grace whispered. I mean it. But they said federal charges. They said you could go to prison. Let me worry about that. I don't want you to go to prison because of me. Grace. He put his hands on her shoulders, gentle but firm. 6 years ago, I lost everyone I loved because I wasn't there. I've spent every day since then wishing I could go back, wishing I could fight for them, wishing I could have done something different. His voice roughened. I ain't losing you too. Not without a fight. She stared at him. You'd really do that? Fight for me? Yeah, I would. Why? The question was simple. The answer wasn't. Because you're worth fighting for, Eli said finally. Because in 4 days you've made this cabin feel more like a home than it's felt in years. Because when I look at you, I don't just see a lost girl. I see someone who's brave and kind and stronger than she knows. He paused. And because maybe you're not the only one who needed saving. Grace's face crumpled. She threw her arms around his neck, held on tight. I don't want to lose you either, she whispered. Eli closed his eyes, held her back. Behind them, the fire burned low. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying the promise of another storm. And somewhere in town, men were making plans. Joseph came that night after Grace was asleep. "They're not leaving," he said, standing on the porch in the dark. "Price has taken over half the boarding house, sending telegrams east, organizing something. Search party. Maybe, or worse." Joseph's voice was grim. "I talked to Agnes McBride. She's sorry about telling them, says she didn't know what they wanted. But the damage is done. Everyone in town knows now." Eli's jaw tightened. "Anyone on our side?" "More than you'd think. Reverend Stone came by the store today asking questions. Doc Chen offered to swear Grace has a medical condition that prevents travel. Even Agnes is having second thoughts, says she didn't like the way Price talked about the girl, like she was property, not a person. That's because to him, she is property. To the law, she might be too." Joseph stepped closer. "Eli, you need to think about this. Really think. You can't fight federal marshals, can't outrun lawyers with unlimited money. If they want her bad enough, they can't have her." "Eli, I said they can't have her." Eli's voice was hard as winter iron. "You didn't see her face when those men came, Joseph. You didn't see the fear. She's already lost everything once. I'm not making her lose it again." Joseph was quiet a long moment. "And what about what you lose? What do I have to lose? A mortgage I can't pay. A ranch that's been dying for years. I got nothing, Joseph. Nothing that matters. You have your life. A life ain't worth much if you spend it hiding from the things that scare you." The words hung between them. Joseph studied his friend. This man he'd known for 4 years, watched punish himself day after day, push away every chance at connection. "She's changed you," Joseph said finally. "Maybe." "That's good. That's a good thing." He reached out, gripped Eli's shoulder. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. You know that." "I know. And the town might be too. More of it than you think." Eli nodded slowly. "Will you do something for me?" "Name it. If something goes wrong, if they take me, put me in chains." He paused. "Get her out. Take her to the reservation if you have to. Somewhere they can't find her. Somewhere she can be safe." Joseph's face was solemn. "You'd trust me with that?" "There's nobody else I'd trust." They shook hands in the dark. Old gesture. Sacred. Joseph mounted his horse, rode off into the night. Eli went inside. Grace was still sleeping, but she'd kicked off the blankets, brow furrowed in some nightmare he couldn't see. He covered her again, brushed hair from her face. "I won't let them take you," he whispered. "I promise." She stirred, but didn't wake. The next morning, Grace wouldn't let him out of her sight. She followed him to the barn, stood in the doorway while he fed the horses, handed him tools before he asked for them. When he looked up from mending tack, she was watching him with those 2 big eyes. "What is it?" "Nothing." "Grace." She bit her lip. "What if they come back, the men from yesterday? What if they come when you're out checking fence, or I'm not going anywhere?" "But you have to work. You have animals to feed, things to do." "They can wait." "No, they can't. I heard you talking to Joseph, about the mortgage, about the ranch dying." Her voice dropped. "I know you're in trouble because of me." Eli set down his tools. "Come here." She crossed to him, small and hesitant. He lifted her onto the workbench so they were closer to eye level. "Listen to me," he said. "The ranch was in trouble before you got here. The mortgage was overdue before I found you in that snowbank. None of that is your fault. But if you'd taken the reward..." "I don't want their money." "It's $500. You could pay off everything. You could..." "Grace." His voice was gentle but firm. "Some things aren't for sale. You're one of them." Her eyes filled. "Why? Why do you care so much? You don't even know me." "I know enough. You know I'm trouble. You know keeping me could ruin your life." "Maybe." Eli reached out, lifted her chin so she had to look at him. "But I also know you're brave. I know you survived something that would have broken most grown men. I know you care about other people more than yourself, and I know—" He hesitated. "What? I know that when I look at you, I feel something I haven't felt in a long time." "What?" "Hope." Grace stared at him. Tears spilled over, ran down her cheeks. "I don't want you to get hurt because of me," she whispered. "Too late for that." "What do you mean?" Eli smiled, small and sad. "Means I already care. Can't take that back now even if I wanted to." "Do you want to?" "No, I don't." She threw her arms around him, buried her face in his shoulder. He held her, this small girl who'd somehow cracked open his frozen heart. "Whatever happens," Grace said, muffled against his coat, "I want you to know something." "What's that?" "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, since everything. You're the only good thing." Eli's throat closed. He held her tighter. They stayed like that until the horses started getting restless. Then Grace pulled back, wiped her eyes, lifted her chin. "Teach me to shoot." Eli blinked. "What?" "The rifle. Teach me to use it. If those men come back, if something happens, I want to be able to help." "You're 8 years old." "My father was going to teach me when I turned 10. He said every person should know how to protect themselves." Her voice steadied. "I'm not going to be helpless. Not again." Eli looked at her, saw the determination in her eyes, the fierce, desperate need to have some control over her own fate. "All right," he said. "But we start with the basics, and you don't touch that rifle without me present." "Understood." "Understood." They spent the rest of the morning behind the barn. Eli showed her how to hold the weapon, how to sight down the barrel, how to squeeze the trigger instead of pulling. She was too small to handle the Winchester properly, but she listened, learned, asked questions that showed she was thinking. By noon, her shoulder was bruised from the recoil, but she hadn't complained once. "You're a natural," Eli said. Grace looked up at him. "Really? Really? Your father would have been proud." Something flickered across her face. Pain, grief, but also something else. Pride, maybe. The beginning of healing. "Can we practice again tomorrow?" "If the weather holds." "And if those men come back, then I'll handle it." "What if you can't?" Eli looked at her, this fierce, frightened child who refused to give up. "Then we'll handle it together." That afternoon, Widow Agnes McBride came to the ranch. Eli saw her wagon coming up the trail and felt his shoulders tense. But she was alone. No lawyers. No deputies. Just a gray-haired woman in a heavy coat, looking uncomfortable. "Mr. Harmon?" She stopped. Her horse didn't dismount. "I came to apologize." "For what?" "You know for what. I told those men about the girl. Didn't think anything of it at the time. They seemed so concerned, so proper. Said they were looking for a missing child. I thought I was helping." Her voice dropped. "But after they left, I started thinking about the way they talked, about what they really wanted." "And what do you think they really want?" "Her money, her inheritance. Same thing powerful men always want." Agnes looked toward the cabin. "Is she in there?" "The girl?" Eli said nothing. "I'm not going to tell anyone. That's what I came to say. Whatever you decide to do, whatever happens, I'm not helping them anymore." She reached into her wagon, pulled out a sack. "Brought supplies. Flour, salt, coffee. Some cloth for making clothes. That child's going to need things if she's staying through winter." Eli stared at the sack. "Why?" "Because I know what it's like to lose people. Because I raised 4 children and buried 3. Because that little girl deserves better than being handed off to some rich old man who didn't even come to her father's wedding." Agnes's eyes were hard. "And because I'm tired of watching good people get crushed by bad ones." The cabin door opened. Grace stood in the doorway watching. Agnes looked at her. Her expression softened. "Hello, child." Grace glanced at Eli. He nodded. "Hello," Grace said quietly. "I'm Agnes McBride. I run the general store in town." She paused. "I'm sorry about your parents. I'm sorry about everything." Grace was silent for a moment. Then, "You're the one who told them where I was." Agnes flinched. "Yes, I am." "Why?" "Because I was foolish. Because I didn't think." Agnes's voice shook. "But I'm trying to make it right now, if you'll let me." Grace looked at Eli again. Something passed between them, a question and answer. "All right," Grace said finally. "Thank you for the supplies." Agnes nodded, set the sack on the porch. "There's more where that came from. And people in town who feel the same way I do. The reverend, the doctor, others who don't like what's happening." She looked at Eli. "You're not alone in this, Mr. Harmon. Remember that." She turned her wagon, drove back toward town. Eli watched her go. Then he looked at Grace. "She could be lying," Grace said. "It could be a trick. Could be." "Do you trust her?" Eli thought about it. "I trust that she meant what she said. Whether that's enough." He shook his head. "We'll see." They brought the supplies inside. That night, for the first time, Grace ate dinner without being asked. She even smiled once when Eli burned the biscuits and cursed loud enough to startle the horses. "Mama burned things too," she said. "She always said cooking was harder than embroidery." "Your mama did embroidery. She was very good at it. She made me a sampler for my room. It said, 'Home is where the heart is.'" Grace's voice went soft. It burned with everything else. Eli was quiet. Then he stood cross to the small trunk in the corner, the one he hadn't opened in years. He dug through it past old clothes and forgotten tools until he found what he was looking for. A piece of cloth, faded, frayed at the edges. Words stitched in uneven letters, "With love always." "Martha made this," he said, bringing it back to the table. "Wasn't much for embroidery. Said her fingers were too clumsy, but she tried." Grace reached out, touched the fabric gently. "It's beautiful. It's crooked and the stitching's loose. That's what makes it beautiful. She made it herself, for you." Eli's throat tightened. He hadn't looked at this cloth in 6 years, had shoved it in the trunk and tried to forget. But now seeing it through Grace's eyes, "Would you like to have it?" he heard himself say. Grace looked up sharply. "What?" "I've got no use for it. Just sits in that trunk getting older. Maybe it should belong to someone who appreciates it. But it was your wife's. She'd want someone to have it, someone who understands." Eli pushed it toward her. "Consider it a gift." Grace picked up the cloth, carefully cradled it against her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." "You're welcome." That night she slept with Martha's embroidery under her pillow. And when Eli checked on her before turning in, he saw she was smiling in her sleep. First time since he'd found her. The storm came back the next morning. Harder this time. Meaner. Eli secured the animals, boarded up the weak spots in the cabin wall, brought in enough firewood to last 3 days. Grace helped where she could, carrying logs half her size, struggling but refusing to quit. By noon they were trapped, white everywhere, wind howling like something wounded. "Will Joseph be all right?" Grace asked, staring at the window. "Joseph knows these mountains better than anyone. He'll find shelter. And the men from town, the lawyer? Nobody's traveling in this." Eli added another log to the fire. "We're safe for now." Grace nodded, but she didn't look convinced. She sat by the fire, Martha's embroidery in her lap, tracing the crooked stitches with her finger. "Eli." "Yeah. What happens after? When the storm clears? When they come back?" He'd been thinking about that too. Had been thinking about it for days. "I don't know," he admitted. "We fight. We find a way. We don't give up. What if there's no way? What if the law is just bigger than us? Eli crossed to her, sat on the floor so they were at the same level. Let me tell you something my father told me once, he said. When I was about your age, maybe a little older, there was a man in our town, a rich man who wanted our land, had lawyers, had money, had everything. Everyone said we should just sell, take what we could get. But my father said no. What happened? We lost. He took the land anyway, burned our house, drove us out. We ended up with nothing. Grace's face fell. Then why? But here's what I remember. Eli leaned closer. I remember my father standing on the porch the night before they came, standing tall, looking out at our land. And he said, they can take the ground, but they can't take who we are. They can't take what we choose to stand for. Did that help? After you lost. It helped me understand what kind of man I wanted to be. The kind who fights. The kind who doesn't just give up because the odds are bad. Eli put his hand on her shoulder. Sometimes losing the right way matters more than winning the wrong way. Grace was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked up at him, eyes bright. I want to be that kind of person too. You already are. Promise? Promise. The storm raged for 2 more days. They talked, they ate, they slept. Grace had more nightmares, woke screaming twice, but each time Eli was there, holding her, telling her she was safe. On the 3rd morning, the wind stopped. Eli went to the window, clear sky, bright sun, snow piled high but starting to melt. The roads would be passable by tomorrow, maybe sooner. They'll come now, Grace said from behind him. Won't they? Yeah, they will. She stood beside him looking out at the white world. I'm not afraid, she said, voice steady, chin lifted. Eli looked down at her, this small girl who'd survived so much, who'd taught him to feel again. Neither am I, he said. But that wasn't quite true. He was afraid of losing her, afraid of failing again, afraid of what he might have to do to keep her safe. But some fears were worth facing. Some things were worth fighting for, and Grace Margaret Whitfield was worth everything. They came the next morning, earlier than Eli expected. He was feeding the horses when he heard the riders. 4 this time, not 2. Price in front, Deputy Reed beside him, and 2 more men Eli didn't recognize. Big men, armed. Grace. Eli's voice was calm but urgent. Get inside. Lock the door. She was already moving, face pale but steady. The door slammed behind her. Eli heard the bolt slide home. He walked to meet them, rifle in hand. Not raised but visible. Price stopped his horse 10 feet away. His face was harder than before. Colder. Mr. Harmon, I trust you've had time to reconsider your position. Ain't nothing to reconsider. I was afraid you'd say that. Price nodded to the men behind him. These gentlemen are federal marshals. They have authority to search your property and remove any minor children found to be in unlawful custody. Eli's grip tightened on the rifle. Unlawful custody. That's what you're calling it. That's what the law calls it. You have no legal claim to Grace Whitfield, no blood relation, no court-appointed guardianship. You're holding her against the wishes of her lawful family. Her lawful family didn't want her until she was worth something. Price's jaw twitched. Mr. Whitfield deeply regrets his estrangement from his daughter. He wishes to make amends by providing for his granddaughter. Providing what money mansions? That what she needs? Better than a failing ranch and a broken man who can't even pay his mortgage. The words landed hard. Eli felt the truth in them, the shame. But he didn't back down. She's happy here, safe, cared for. That's more than your money can buy. That's not for you to decide. Price's voice sharpened. I'm giving you one more chance. Step aside. Let us take the girl peacefully. In exchange, we'll drop all charges and compensate you for your trouble. How much? $1,000. The number hung in the air, twice what the ranch was worth. Enough to start over somewhere else free and clear. That's generous, Eli said slowly. Price smiled thin and satisfied. I thought you might see reason. I do see reason. I see a man trying to buy a child like she's cattle. Eli's voice went cold. The answer's no. The smile vanished. Then you leave me no choice. Price turned to Deputy Reed. Execute the warrant. Reed dismounted, reached for his gun. The other marshals followed. Eli raised the rifle. First man who touches that door gets a hole in him. Everyone froze. You'd shoot a federal officer. Reed's voice was incredulous. I'd shoot anyone who tries to take my daughter. The word slipped out before Eli could stop it. My daughter. He saw the surprise on Price's face, the uncertainty in Reed's eyes. Mr. Harmon? Price's voice was different now. Careful. I understand you've become attached to the girl, but surely you see this as madness. You can't fight the law. You can't win. Maybe not, but I can make it cost you. Silence. Wind stirred the snow. Horses shifted nervously. Then the cabin door opened. Stop. Grace stood in the doorway, small against the frame. Her face was white, but her voice was steady. Grace, get inside. Eli didn't lower the rifle. No. She stepped onto the porch. This is about me. I should be the one to say. Price leaned forward. Miss Whitfield, thank God you're safe. Your grandfather has been worried sick. My grandfather doesn't know me. Grace's voice was quiet but clear. He's never met me. He never wrote to me, never sent birthday gifts, never acknowledged I existed. And now he wants me because I'm worth something. That's not true. He wants to take care of you. He wants to take care of my inheritance. That's different. Price's face reddened. You're a child. You don't understand. I understand plenty. Grace stepped forward, standing beside Eli now. I understand my father died protecting me. I understand my mother told me to run because she loved me more than herself. And I understand that this man, she looked up at Eli, saved my life when he didn't have to. Fed me, sheltered me, taught me to shoot, gave me something that belonged to his dead wife because he knew I needed it. Her voice cracked but didn't break. That's family. That's love. Not some lawyer with papers and money. Silence again. Longer this time. Deputy Reed looked uncomfortable. Even the federal marshals seemed uncertain, glancing at each other. Price recovered first. Miss Whitfield, I understand you've been through a terrible ordeal, but your emotional state doesn't change the legal reality. Mr. Harmon has no right to keep you. Your grandfather is your lawful guardian. The court has decided. Then the court is wrong. Grace, I won't go. Her chin lifted, just like Eli had seen her do a dozen times. You can drag me to Denver, put me in a mansion, surround me with servants, but I'll run. Every chance I get, I'll run. Back here, back to him, because this is my home now and he's my family, and nothing you do will change that. Price stared at her. For the first time, something like doubt flickered in his eyes. You're sure about this? He asked quietly. Absolutely sure. Yes. You understand what you're giving up. The money, the education, I don't care about any of that. Grace's voice was fierce now. I care about being safe, being wanted, being loved. Mr. Harmon gives me all of that. What does my grandfather give me? Price had no answer. The moment stretched. Then Deputy Reed holstered his gun. Price, he said, maybe we should reconsider. What? The girls made her feelings clear. Forcing her isn't going to... She's 8 years old. She doesn't get to make this decision. Maybe not legally, but morally. Reed shook his head. I signed on to protect children, not kidnap them. This isn't kidnapping. This is... It'll look like kidnapping. Small girl screaming, while marshals drag her away from the only person she trusts. Reed's voice hardened. That story gets out. It won't matter what the law says. Public opinion will crucify us. And your client. Price's face went through several colors. Red, white, red again. We have a warrant. Warrants can be delayed, procedures reconsidered. There are channels. Reed looked at Eli. Mr. Harmon, you willing to go through proper channels, file for guardianship, let a judge decide? Eli's grip on the rifle loosened slightly. If that's what it takes. It'll take time. Months probably. And there's no guarantee you'll win. I understand. But you're willing to try. I'll do whatever I have to do. Reed nodded slowly, turned to Price. There. He's willing to work within the system. No need for confrontation. Price's jaw worked. Mr. Whitfield won't accept this. Then Mr. Whitfield can come out here himself and explain to his granddaughter why he's more interested in her money than her well-being. Reed mounted his horse. We're done here. For now. Deputy Reed. I said we're done. Reed's voice left no room for argument. You want to push this, you get a different marshal. I'm out. He rode off. The federal marshals exchanged glances, then followed. Price sat alone on his horse, face twisted with fury. He looked at Eli, at Grace, back at Eli. This isn't over, he said quietly. You may have won today, but the law is still the law. And William Whitfield has more money than God. He'll bury you in paperwork. Drag this out until you can't afford another meal. And then I'll still be here. Eli's voice was steady. Waiting, fighting, whatever it takes. Price studied him for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression. Not respect exactly, but something close. You really love her, he said. Don't you? Yeah, I do. Price shook his head slowly. You're a fool, but maybe. He didn't finish, just turned his horse and rode away. Eli watched until he disappeared. Then he lowered the rifle, felt the tension drain from his shoulders. Eli. Grace was looking up at him, face uncertain. Did we win? For now. They'll be back. But we have time. Some. She nodded slowly. Then she slipped her hand into his small fingers, wrapping around his calloused palm. Thank you, she whispered, for calling me your daughter. Eli's throat closed. He squeezed her hand. Meant it. I know. She leaned against him, solid and warm. That's why it mattered. They stood there together, watching the empty trail. The sun was bright on the snow, the air was cold and clean, and for the first time in 6 years, Eli Harmon felt like he might actually have something worth living for. That night, Grace had the worst nightmare yet. Eli woke to screaming, not loud, muffled, desperate, like someone fighting to breathe. He was out of bed and across the room before his eyes fully opened. Grace was thrashing in the blankets, face twisted, tears streaming. Mama, Mama, don't please. Grace. He grabbed her shoulders, gentle but firm. Grace, wake up. Her eyes flew open, wild, unseeing. She struck out at him, small fists pounding his chest. Hey, hey, it's me. It's Eli. He caught her wrists, held them still. You're safe. You're in the cabin. It's just a dream. Recognition slowly crept into her eyes. The fighting stopped. She went limp, shaking so hard her teeth chattered. I saw them, she whispered. I saw them again. Your parents. She nodded, unable to speak. Eli pulled her close, wrapped his arms around her. She clung to him like a drowning child, face pressed against his chest, sobs racking her small body. Tell me, he said quietly. If you can. Sometimes it helps to say it out loud. She shook her head. You don't have to, but if you want to, I'm here. For a long moment, there was just the sound of her crying. Then slowly, the words started coming. We stopped to camp. Papa said the pass was too dangerous in the dark. Mama didn't want to stop. She said something felt wrong. but Papa said she was being foolish. Eli stroked her hair, said nothing. I woke up when the shooting started. Mama grabbed me, pulled me under the wagon, told me to stay hidden no matter what. Then she went to help Papa. Grace's voice went flat. She had his pistol, the small one he kept in his coat. She fired twice. I heard the shots. Then she screamed. Grace. I watched through the wheel spokes. The words came faster now, tumbling out like she couldn't stop them. Saw the men dragging Papa from the wagon. Saw them. They shot him, right in front of Mama. And she was screaming and fighting, and then... Her voice broke. Then they shot her too. Eli's arms tightened around her. I should have done something. Should have run out. Should have... No. But maybe if I'd... No. His voice was firm. You listen to me, Grace. There was nothing you could have done. Nothing. Those men had guns. You were a child. Your mama told you to hide because she wanted you to live. That was her gift to you. The last thing she could give. You don't dishonor that by wishing you'd died too. Grace looked up at him, face wet with tears. That's what you said before. About carrying them with you. Because it's true. But how? How do you carry something that heavy? Eli was quiet for a moment. Then he reached for her hand, placed it over his heart. You feel that? She nodded. My heart's still beating. After everything I lost, everything I did wrong, it's still beating. Yours too. And as long as our hearts beat, they're with us. Not gone. Just changed. Changed how? They become part of us. The love they gave us, the lessons they taught, it doesn't disappear. It lives here. He pressed her hand harder against his chest. In the blood. In the bone. In everything we do. Grace was silent for a long moment. Then she pulled her hand back, placed it over her own heart. I can feel it, she whispered. Mama and Papa. I can feel them. Good. Hold on to that. What if it hurts too much? It will. Sometimes. But the hurt is proof that it was real. That they mattered. That love existed. Eli's voice roughened. I'd rather hurt forever than never have felt anything at all. Grace leaned against him again, exhausted now, the fight drained out of her. Will you stay until I fall asleep? I'll stay as long as you need. Promise. Promise. She closed her eyes. Her breathing slowly steadied, but she didn't let go of his hand. Eli sat there in the dark, watching her sleep, thinking about Martha and Samuel, about the graves on the hill, about all the years he'd spent trying not to feel anything. He'd been wrong. So wrong. Feeling was the only thing that made life worth living. The pain, the joy, the love, all of it tangled together, inseparable. Grace had taught him that. This small girl with too much grief and too much courage. He'd spent 6 years dying. She'd given him a reason to live. Joseph came at dawn. Eli was on the porch, coffee in hand, when the familiar shape appeared on the trail. Joseph dismounted, tied his horse, climbed the steps. Heard what happened yesterday. News travels fast. Everything travels fast when lawyers are involved. Joseph accepted the coffee Eli handed him. Reed's a good man. Surprised he stood up to Price like that. Me too. Won't last, though. Price will find another marshal, one who follows orders better. I know. They stood in silence, watching the sun climb. How's the girl? Joseph asked. Nightmares. Bad ones. But she's strong. She'd have to be. Eli sipped his coffee. Can I ask you something? Always. Your daughter. The one they took to the reservation school. How did you let her go? Joseph was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was rough. I didn't let her go. They took her. Soldiers came, said all children had to attend government school. Learn white man's ways. I fought. Tried to hide her. but there were too many of them. I'm sorry. She was 7, same age as Grace almost. They put her in a wagon with 12 other children. She screamed for me, reached out her hands. Joseph's jaw tightened. I can still hear her voice, after all these years. Eli said nothing. There was nothing to say. She died there, 2 winters later. Fever, they said. But I think... Joseph stopped, swallowed. I think she died of loneliness, of being ripped away from everyone who loved her. Joseph, that's why I'm helping you. Joseph looked at him, eyes fierce. That's why I'll do whatever it takes to keep Grace here. Because I couldn't save my daughter, couldn't protect her, but maybe... His voice cracked. Maybe I can help you protect yours. Eli's throat closed. He gripped Joseph's shoulder, held on. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We haven't won anything. We won yesterday. Yesterday was a battle. The war's just starting. Joseph set down his coffee cup. Price is sending telegrams. I've got friends who watch The Wire. He's calling for reinforcements, more lawyers, more marshals, maybe even Pinkertons. Pinkertons. Whitfield's got money, lot of money, and he doesn't like losing. Eli's gut clenched. Pinkertons were mercenaries, professional hunters. If they came... How long do we have? Week, maybe 2. Depends on how fast they travel. What do? Fight smarter, build alliances, make it so messy that even Whitfield thinks twice. Joseph paused. Agnes McBride's been talking to people. Reverend Stone, too. Lot of folks in town don't like what's happening. They see an outsider trying to buy a child, it rubs them wrong. You think they'd stand with us? Some. Enough to make a difference, maybe. Joseph looked toward the cabin. But in the end, it'll come down to you and that girl. What you're willing to sacrifice. How hard you're willing to fight. I'll fight until there's nothing left. I know you will. That's why I'm worried. Eli frowned. What do you mean? Fighting's easy. Dying's easy. But living with the consequences, whatever they are, that's hard. Joseph's voice was gentle now. If you lose her, Eli, if they take her despite everything, can you survive that? The question hit like a blow. I don't know, Eli admitted. You need to figure it out. Because Grace needs you either way. Win or lose, she needs to know you'll keep going. That she hasn't destroyed you just by being here. Eli thought about that. About the years after Martha and Samuel. The darkness. The endless crushing weight of grief. He couldn't go back to that. Wouldn't survive it a second time. But Grace. I'll figure it out, he said finally. Whatever happens. You promise? Yeah, I promise. Joseph nodded, satisfied. Good. Now let's talk strategy. Grace woke to the sound of voices. She crept to the door, cracked it open. Eli and Joseph were on the porch talking low. She caught fragments. Pinkertons, reinforcements, fight smarter. Fear coiled in her stomach, familiar and cold. They were coming. The bad men with their papers and their money. And no matter what Eli said, no matter how hard he fought, they might win. She pulled the door shut, pressed her back against it. Think, she told herself. Think like Papa would. Papa had always said the smartest person in the room wasn't the one with the most money. It was the one who understood what everyone else wanted and found a way to give it to them. What did the lawyer want? Money. Power. To please his client. What did her grandfather want? Her inheritance. Control. Revenge on her father, maybe even though he was dead. What did she want? To stay. To be loved. To never feel alone again. And Eli, what did Eli want? The same things she realized. He wanted her to stay. Wanted to love her. Wanted to stop feeling alone. But he also wanted something else. Something he wouldn't admit. He wanted to forgive himself. For Martha. For Samuel. For not being there when they needed him. Grace looked at the door, thinking hard. Maybe that was the key. Maybe if she could give him that forgiveness piece, a reason to believe he was good enough, maybe then, no matter what happened, he'd be okay. She crossed to the trunk where Martha's embroidery lay, picked it up, held it close. "Help me," she whispered to the woman she'd never known. "Help me save him, the way he saved me." The cloth was warm in her hands, worn soft from years of touching. And maybe it was her imagination, but Grace could have sworn she felt something stir in response. A whisper of wind, a breath of warmth. "Take care of him. He needs you as much as you need him." Grace nodded slowly, set the embroidery down. Then she went to find Eli. He was alone on the porch now. Joseph had gone. The sun was high bright on the melting snow. "Can we go somewhere?" Grace asked. Eli looked down at her. "Where?" "The hill, where your wife and son are buried." She took his hand. "I want to meet them." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, surprise, something deeper. "Why?" "Because they're part of you, and you're part of me now." Grace squeezed his hand. "Please." He was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. They walked together through snow that came up past Grace's knees. Eli helped her over the worst drifts, lifted her when she couldn't climb. They didn't talk. Didn't need to. The cottonwood stood alone on the hilltop. Two crosses beneath it weathered gray by years and wind. Martha Harmon once said, "Beloved wife, Samuel Harmon. Taken too soon." Grace knelt in the snow, placed her hand on Martha's cross. "Hello?" she said softly. "My name is Grace. I'm staying with Eli for a while." Eli stood behind her, frozen. "He's been very kind to me," Grace continued. "He saved my life, gave me food and shelter, taught me to shoot." She smiled slightly. "He's not very good at cooking, but he tries." A sound from Eli, almost a laugh. "I wanted you to know that he's okay. He's sad sometimes, but he's okay. And I promise," her voice strengthened, "I promise I'll take care of him, the way you would have, the way he took care of you." Silence. Just wind in the cottonwood branches. Then Grace turned, looked up at Eli. "She was lucky to have you." Eli's face crumpled. He dropped to his knees in the snow, pulled Grace against him, held on like she was the only solid thing in a world that kept shifting. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for this." "She forgives you," Grace said into his shoulder. "You know that, right, for not being there. She forgives you." "You can't know that." "Yes, I can, because I know what it's like to love someone. And when you love someone, you don't want them to suffer. You want them to be happy." She pulled back, looked him in the eye. "She wants you to be happy, Eli. That's all she ever wanted." Eli stared at her, this small girl with too much wisdom for her years. "How did you get so smart?" "I listened, like Mama taught me." He laughed then, really laughed. The first time Grace had heard it, and the sound was like music. "Yeah," he said. "I reckon you did." They stayed on the hill until the sun started to drop. Eli told her stories about Martha, how they'd met at a barn dance, how she'd burned every meal for the first year of their marriage, how she'd sung to Samuel every night, even though she couldn't carry a tune. Grace told him about her own mother, the way she smelled like lavender, the bedtime stories she made up always with happy endings, the way she'd dance around the kitchen when she thought no one was watching, two broken people sharing their grief, making it lighter by carrying it together. When they finally walked back to the cabin, hands linked, something had changed between them. They weren't just survivor and rescuer anymore. They were family. And nothing, not lawyers, not marshals, not all the money in the world, was going to change that. The Pinkertons arrived on a Tuesday. Eli knew what they were before they reached the property line. Something in the way they rode. Professional. Cold. Men who did ugly work for money and didn't lose sleep over it. 4 of them led by a man with dead eyes and a scar running from his temple to his jaw. They stopped at the fence, made no move to cross. The scarred man raised a hand. "Mr. Harmon, I'm Garrett Cole, Pinkerton National Detective Agency. We need to talk." Eli stood on the porch, rifle in hand. Grace was inside door, barred. Joseph was somewhere on the ridge watching. They'd planned for this. Talk about what? About the girl. About making this easier for everyone. Ain't nothing easy about taking a child from her home. Cole dismounted slowly, hands visible. "I'm not here to take anyone, not yet. Just to deliver a message." "From who?" "William Whitfield, Grace's grandfather." Eli's grip tightened on the rifle. "Already heard from his lawyers. Answers still no." "This isn't about lawyers." Cole reached into his coat. Eli's finger found the trigger. Cole stopped. "Just a letter, that's all. May I?" A long pause. Then Eli nodded. Cole pulled out an envelope, held it up. "Mr. Whitfield wants you to read this, personally," he said. Cole's expression shifted slightly, something almost like confusion. "He said it might change your mind." "Doubt that." "So did I. But I'm paid to deliver, not to judge." Cole walked forward slowly, set the envelope on the porch rail. "Read it. Think about it. We'll be back in 3 days for your answer." "And if my answer's still no?" Cole's dead eyes met his. "Then things get difficult. For everyone." He mounted, signaled to his men. They rode off without looking back. Eli waited until they disappeared. Then he picked up the envelope. His name was written on the front in elegant script. The seal on the back was wax-pressed with what looked like a family crest. "What is it?" Grace stood in the doorway, face pale. "Letter, from your grandfather." Her expression hardened. "Burn it." "Maybe we should read it first." "Why? So he can lie to us more. Promise things he won't deliver." Eli looked at the envelope in his hands. She was probably right. But something in Cole's face, that flicker of confusion, nagged at him. "Let's see what he has to say. Then we decide." Grace didn't argue, but her jaw was tight as she followed him inside. Eli broke the seal, unfolded the paper. The handwriting was the same elegant script, but the words... He read them once, then again, then a third time slower. "What does it say?" Grace demanded. Eli handed her the letter without speaking. Grace read aloud, voice flat at first, then faltering. "Dear Mr. Harmon, I will not waste words on pleasantries neither of us would believe. You have something I want. My granddaughter. The last living connection to my daughter Catherine, who I failed in every way a father can fail. I did not attend her wedding because I was proud and stubborn and wrong. I did not write when Grace was born because I was ashamed of my pride and too cowardly to admit it. I did not reach out when I learned of the massacre because I was convinced Grace was dead and could not bear to confirm it. Now I learn she is alive, living with a stranger who, by all accounts, loves her more than I have ever loved anyone. And I am faced with a choice. I can fight you. Lawyers, marshals, all the weapons money can buy. I would probably win. But I would lose my granddaughter in the process. She would hate me. Rightfully so. Or I can do something I have never done in my 63 years. I can surrender. This is my offer, Mr. Harmon. Keep her. Raise her as your own. I will withdraw all legal claims, dismiss the lawyers, call off the Pinkertons. In exchange, I ask only one thing. Let me meet her. Once. Just once. So I can see Catherine's eyes in her face. So I can tell her I am sorry. So I can die knowing I did at least one thing right. If you refuse, I will not fight. I will simply disappear from her life as I should have done from the beginning. The choice is yours. William Whitfield. Silence. Grace lowered the letter, hands trembling. He wants to give up. Looks like it. Why? Why now? Eli took the letter back, read through it again. I think I think he means it. About being sorry. How can you tell? Because this is the letter of a man who's got nothing left to lose, who's realized too late that money and pride don't mean anything without people to share them with. Grace was quiet for a long moment. My mother used to talk about him sometimes, when she thought I wasn't listening. She said he was hard, proud, that he never apologized for anything in his life. Maybe that's why this matters. What do you mean? An apology from a man who never apologizes. That's worth something. That's real. Grace looked at him, eyes searching. Do you think I should meet him? Eli's chest tightened. This was her choice. Had to be. What do you want? I don't know. Her voice cracked. I wanted to hate him. It was easier when I could hate him. But now he's not just a villain. He's a person who made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. Yeah, but he's trying to make them right. That counts for something. Grace sank into the chair by the fire, pulled her knees to her chest. Mama forgave him. Before she died. She told me once that hating people was like drinking poison and hoping they'd die. She said forgiveness wasn't about them. It was about us. About not carrying the weight anymore. Smart woman? She was. The smartest person I ever knew. Grace looked at the letter in Eli's hands. If I meet him, will you come with me? Wild horses couldn't keep me away. She almost smiled. Then I'll do it. One meeting. But he has to come here, to our home. I'm not going to Denver. Eli nodded. I'll send word with the Pinkertons when they come back. And if it's a trap, if he's lying, then we'll handle it, together. Grace stood cross to him, wrapped her arms around his waist. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. But we're doing it anyway. Yeah, we're doing it anyway. The next 3 days were the longest of Eli's life. Grace barely slept. Neither did he. They went through the motions, feeding animals, chopping wood, cooking meals, but everything felt suspended. Waiting. Joseph came by twice bringing news from town. The Pinkertons had been seen at the boarding house keeping to themselves. Price had left on the morning stage headed back to Denver. Deputy Reed had been reassigned to another territory. Whatever's happening, Joseph said, it's happening quietly now. No more public spectacle. That worries me more. Me too. On the second night, Grace asked to sleep in Eli's bed. Nightmares, he asked. No, I don't want to be alone. They lay side by side staring at the ceiling. Outside, wind stirred the trees. Eli. Yeah. What if he takes one look at me and decides I'm not worth the trouble? What if I remind him too much of my mother? What if... Hey. Eli turned to face her. Listen to me. Whatever happens when he comes, whatever he says or does, it doesn't change who you are. You're brave. You're kind. You're the best thing that's happened to me in 6 years. And if he can't see that, then he's the one missing out. Not you. Grace's eyes filled. You mean that? Every word. She reached out, found his hand in the dark. I love you, she said. You know that, right? Not because you saved me. Not because you're all I have. Because you're you. Because you chose me when you didn't have to. Because you're the father I always wanted. Eli's throat closed. He squeezed her hand, couldn't speak. Is it okay if I call you that? Grace's voice was small. Father. He found his voice. Rough, broken, but there. Yeah, it's okay. Good. She scooted closer, tucked herself against his side. Good. They fell asleep like that. Father and daughter, chosen not born. Cole returned on the third day. Same 4 Pinkertons, same dead eyes. But something in his posture was different, less threatening, almost respectful. Mr. Harmon, have you made your decision? Eli stood on the porch, Grace beside him. Her hand was in his small fingers, gripping tight. "We have. She'll meet him." Cole's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. "There are conditions," Eli continued. "He comes here, to our home. No lawyers, no extra men. Just him. Mr. Whitfield is 73 years old. The journey from Denver is... Then he can take his time, but those are the terms." Cole was silent for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I'll convey your message. When should he expect to arrive?" Eli looked at Grace. She squeezed his hand. 2 weeks. That should give him enough time." "Very well." Cole touched his hat brim. "Mr. Harmon, Miss Whitfield." He paused. "For what it's worth, I've done this job for 15 years. Tracked runaways, recovered stolen property, hunted men across 3 territories. But I've never seen anyone fight the way you have. Not for money, not for land, for each other." He mounted his horse. "Whatever happens with the old man, you've already won something most people never find." He rode off. His men followed. Grace watched them go. "What did he mean by that?" "I think he meant we're lucky." "Are we?" Eli looked down at her. This small girl who'd taught him to feel again, who'd given him a reason to live. "Yeah," he said. "We are." The 2 weeks passed slowly. Eli used the time to prepare. Fixed the roof where it leaked, patched the walls, bought new dishes from Agnes McBride, who refused to take payment. "Consider it a gift," she said, "for standing up to those city vultures." Grace helped with everything. She was stronger now, steadier. The nightmares still came, but less often. And when they did, she knew Eli would be there. On the morning of the 14th day, Joseph appeared with news. "Stage just pulled in. Old man with a cane traveling alone. Hired a wagon to bring him out here." Grace's face went pale. "He's really coming." "Looks like it." Eli put his hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to do this. We can turn him away. Say you changed your mind." "No." Grace straightened. "I need to see him. I need to know." "Know what?" "If he's really sorry, or if this is just another game." The wagon appeared an hour later. Eli and Grace waited on the porch. Joseph stood nearby just in case. Agnes McBride had come too, along with Reverend Stone and Dr. Chen. Word had spread. The town wanted to bear witness. The wagon stopped. The driver climbed down, helped his passenger to the ground. William Whitfield was old, older than Eli expected. 73 years had bent his spine, thinned his hair, put tremors in his hands. But his eyes were sharp, alive, fixed on Grace with an intensity that made Eli's gut clench. The old man took a step forward, then another, each one slow, painful, but determined. He stopped 10 feet away, stared at Grace like he was seeing a ghost. "Catherine," he whispered. Grace flinched. "I'm not—" "I know," his voice cracked. "I know you're not, but you look— God in heaven, you look just like her. Same eyes, same chin, same stubborn set to your mouth." He reached into his coat with trembling hands, pulled out a small photograph, held it up. "This is your mother. The day she married your father. She sent it to me even though I'd told her never to contact me again. Even though I'd said terrible things. She sent it anyway." Grace stared at the photograph. Her mother, young and beautiful in a white dress, smiling. "I kept it," Whitfield continued. "All these years. Kept it in my desk drawer, looked at it every night before I went to bed. Every night I told myself I'd write to her tomorrow, apologize, make things right." His voice broke. Tomorrow never came. And now, she's gone. Tears rolled down his weathered cheeks. "I can't bring her back. Can't undo the years I wasted. Can't change what I was. But I can tell you—" He took a shaking breath. "I can tell you that I loved her. That I was wrong. That I spent 15 years being a proud, stubborn fool, and it cost me everything that mattered." Grace was crying too now. silent tears streaming down her face. "Why?" she whispered. "Why did you hate my father?" "I didn't hate him. I was afraid of him. Afraid he'd take Catherine away, give her a life I couldn't control. Afraid that if she didn't need me anymore, I'd have nothing." Whitfield's voice was raw. "And I was right. I pushed her away. And I ended up with nothing anyway." He took another step forward, close enough to touch. "I'm not asking you to forgive me. I don't deserve that. I'm not asking you to love me. How could you love a stranger who abandoned your mother? All I'm asking—" His hand reached out, trembling, stopped just short of Grace's cheek. "All I'm asking is for a chance, to know you, to be part of your life, whatever part you'll allow." Grace looked at Eli. He gave a small nod. She turned back to her grandfather. "My mother forgave you," she said quietly. "She told me. The night before. Before everything. She said she was going to write to you. That she wanted me to know my grandfather. That holding on to anger was like drinking poison and hoping someone else dies." Whitfield's voice was barely a whisper. "Her mother used to say that. Your grandmother. Dead 20 years now, but I hear her voice every day." Grace reached up slowly, took his trembling hand, placed it against her cheek. "I can't forgive you yet," she said. "I don't know you well enough to forgive you. But I want to try. I want to understand." Whitfield broke. This proud, stubborn old man who'd never apologized for anything in his life, who'd built an empire on iron will and cold logic, he broke. Sank to his knees in the dirt, sobbing like a child clutching his granddaughter's hand, like it was the only thing keeping him alive. "Thank you," he gasped. "Thank you. I don't deserve this. I don't deserve—" Grace knelt beside him, put her arms around his shaking shoulders. "Everyone deserves a chance," she said. "That's what Father taught me." Whitfield looked up confused. His eyes found Eli standing on the porch. "Father, that's what I call him, because that's what he is." Grace's voice was steady. "He saved my life, gave me a home, taught me what love looks like when it's real." Whitfield stared at Eli for a long moment. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. One man who'd lost everything looking at another. Slowly, painfully, Whitfield got to his feet. He walked to the porch, stopped in front of Eli. "Mr. Harmon, I owe you a debt I can never repay." "You don't owe me nothing. I owe you everything. You gave my granddaughter something I couldn't. Safety, love, a home." Whitfield's voice dropped. "I came here prepared to make demands. Offer money. Use whatever leverage I had. But seeing her with you, seeing how she looks at you—" He stopped, shook his head. "She's your daughter, in every way that matters. I won't fight that, won't try to take her from you. All I ask is occasional visits, letters, a chance to know her even from a distance." Eli looked at Grace. She nodded. "You can do better than occasional visits," Eli said slowly. Whitfield blinked. "I don't understand." "Winter's hard out here, long, lonely. A man could use company." Eli paused. "There's a boarding house in town. Mrs. McBride runs it. Good food, warm rooms. If you wanted to stay, for a while." Whitfield's eyes widened. "You'd allow that?" "I'm not allowing anything. I'm inviting." Eli extended his hand. "You're Grace's blood. That makes you family. And family takes care of family." For a moment, Whitfield just stared at the offered hand. Then he took it, gripped hard, and something in his face shifted. The hardness softened. The pride cracked. "Thank you," he said. "Thank you, Mr. Harmon." "Eli. Call me Eli." That night they ate dinner together. Eli at the head of the table. Grace beside him. William Whitfield across from them, still shaky but present. Agnes McBride had brought stew. Reverend Stone brought bread. Dr. Chen brought something he called medicine, but tasted suspiciously like whiskey. The cabin had never been so full. Grace laughed more than she had in weeks, told stories about learning to shoot about the beans she'd burned, about Martha's embroidery that she kept under her pillow. Whitfield listened, drank in every word like a man dying of thirst. And Eli watched them both, feeling something he'd almost forgotten. Joy. Pure, simple joy. After everyone left, after Whitfield was safely installed at the boarding house with Agnes fussing over him like a mother hen, Eli and Grace sat on the porch together. The stars were out. The air was cold but clean. "Thank you," Grace said. "For what?" "For letting him in. For not making me choose between you. Wasn't a choice to make. He's your blood. That matters. You're my blood too, just a different kind." Eli smiled. "That's some kind of poetry." "Maybe." Grace leaned against him. "I read a book once that said families are like trees. Some branches grow from the same trunk. Some get grafted on later. But they all share the same roots. They all grow toward the same sun." "Where'd you read that?" "One of Mama's books. She liked poetry." "Sounds like she was a wise woman." "She was. You would have liked her." "I think I would have." They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that comes from knowing you don't have to fill every moment with words. Then Grace spoke again. "Do you think she can see us, Mama? From wherever she is?" Eli considered the question. "I don't know, but I like to think Martha and Samuel can. That they're up there somewhere watching, rooting for us." "I hope so." Grace's voice was soft. "I hope Mama knows I'm okay. That I found someone who loves me. That I'm not alone anymore." Eli put his arm around her, pulled her close. "She knows," he said. "Wherever she is, she knows." Grace looked up at the stars, and for a moment her face was peaceful. Free from grief, from fear, from the weight she'd been carrying. "Father." "Yeah, I'm happy." 3 simple words. But they hit Eli harder than anything else that day. Harder than Whitfield's tears. Harder than the apology he'd never expected to hear. "Me too," he said. "Me too." Joseph found him at dawn. Eli was on the porch, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise. "Heard it went well yesterday. Better than I expected. Old man's really staying. Seems like it." Joseph leaned against the railing, quiet for a moment. "You did good, Eli. 6 months ago you were ready to give up. Now look at you. Got a daughter, got family, got something to live for. Got lucky, more like." "Maybe. But luck's just opportunity meeting preparation." Joseph smiled. "You were ready for her, even if you didn't know it." Eli thought about that. About all the years he'd spent punishing himself, hiding from the world, waiting to die. And then Grace had fallen into his life like a gift he didn't deserve. "She saved me," Eli said quietly, "much as I saved her." That's how it works. The best relationships anyway. Both people saving each other. "When'd you get so wise?" "Always been wise. You just weren't listening." Eli laughed. Actually laughed. And it felt good. Real. From inside the cabin he heard Grace stirring. Waking up. Starting another day. "Better get breakfast going," Eli said. "She like your cooking yet?" "Not even close. But she eats it anyway." "That's love, brother." Joseph clapped him on the shoulder. "That's love." And for the first time in 6 years, Eli Harmon believed it. 3 months passed like water through fingers. The snow melted. The ground thawed. Spring crept into the mountains, slow and cautious, bringing with it something Eli hadn't felt in years. Hope. Grace grew stronger every day. The nightmares faded from every night to once a week, then less. She laughed more, ate more, started running instead of walking, climbing trees, chasing chickens around the yard like any child should. William Whitfield stayed through the worst of winter. The boarding house became his second home. Agnes McBride, his unlikely companion. They played cards in the evenings, argued about politics, shared stories from their separate worlds. And every Sunday without fail, Whitfield made the journey to Eli's ranch. He and Grace would walk the property together. He'd tell her about her mother as a child. She'd show him the rifle Eli had taught her to use, the garden they'd planted, the spot on the hill where Martha and Samuel rested. Slowly, carefully, they built something new. But Eli knew it couldn't last. Spring meant the roads were open. Spring meant lawyers could travel. Spring meant the legal questions they'd postponed would demand answers. The summons arrived on a Tuesday morning. Joseph brought it, face grim. "From the territorial court in Cheyenne. They're requiring your presence, both of you." Eli read the document. Legal language, formal phrasing, but the meaning was clear. A hearing had been scheduled to determine permanent custody of Grace Margaret Whitfield. "When?" Grace asked, voice tight. 3 weeks. "What happens if we lose?" Eli folded the paper carefully. "We won't lose. But if we do, we won't." Grace stared at him. "You don't know that. You can't promise that." "No, I can't." Eli knelt, took her hands. "But I can promise you this. Whatever happens in that courtroom, I will fight. I will not stop fighting. And no matter what any judge says, you are my daughter. That's not something a piece of paper can change." Her lip trembled. "I'm scared." "Me too. But we're going to walk in there together, and we're going to tell them the truth, about who we are, about what we've built, about why we belong together." "What if the truth isn't enough?" Eli pulled her close. "Then we'll make it enough." Whitfield came that evening. He'd aged since winter. The journey from Denver, the emotional toll of reconciliation, the weight of years catching up all at once. But his eyes were clear, sharp. "I heard about the summons," he said. "News travels." "I want to testify." Eli looked at him. "What?" "At the hearing. I want to stand before the judge and tell him that Grace belongs here, with you." "You'd do that? After everything you spent trying to take her?" Whitfield's face crumpled. "That's exactly why I have to do it. I was wrong, Eli. So wrong. And if my testimony can help set things right—" He took a shaky breath. "It won't undo what I did, but maybe it can help prevent more damage." Grace stepped forward. "Grandfather." "Yes, child. Thank you." She hugged him, this frail old man who'd come so far to make amends. "Thank you for choosing us." Whitfield held her tight. Over her head, his eyes met Eli's. "Thank you for letting me," he whispered. The next 3 weeks were a blur. Agnes McBride organized letters of support from every business in town. Reverend Stone drafted a statement about Eli's character. Dr. Chen provided medical records showing Grace's improvement since arriving at the ranch. Joseph talked to families on the reservation, gathered testimonies about Eli's fairness, his kindness, the times he'd helped when no one else would. The whole community rallied around them. But Eli knew it might not be enough. Territorial courts didn't care about character witnesses. They cared about law. And the law was murky when it came to orphaned heiresses and ranchers with no legal standing. 2 nights before the hearing, Grace couldn't sleep. Eli found her on the porch, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the stars. "What if they take me?" she whispered. "They won't." "But what if they do? What if some judge decides I belong in a mansion in Denver instead of here?" Eli sat beside her. "Then I'll come get you." "What do you mean?" "I mean what I said. If they take you, I'll come get you. I don't care about laws or judges or what anyone says. You're my daughter, and I will never stop fighting for you." Grace turned to look at him. "You'd break the law for me. I'd break anything for you. But you could go to prison. You could—" "Grace." Eli took her face in his hands. "Listen to me. 6 years ago, I lost everything. My wife, my son, my reason to keep breathing. I spent every day since then waiting to die, and then you came along." His voice cracked. You gave me something I thought I'd never have again. A family, a future, a reason to get up in the morning." He wiped a tear from her cheek. "I would burn the world down before I let anyone take that away." Grace threw her arms around him, sobbing. "I love you, Father." "I love you too, more than you'll ever know." They stayed on that porch until dawn, watching the stars fade into morning light. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The courthouse in Cheyenne was bigger than Eli expected. Stone walls, high windows, the kind of building designed to make ordinary people feel small. Grace gripped his hand as they climbed the steps, her face pale but determined. Inside the courtroom was already filling. Lawyers in dark suits, clerks with stacks of paper, spectators who'd come to watch the show. At the front, behind a high wooden bench, sat Judge Harold Whitmore. He was older than Eli expected, 60 maybe, gray-haired, stern-faced with eyes that missed nothing. Price was there too, seated at a table near the front, papers spread before him, looking like a man who hadn't slept in days. And in the gallery, familiar faces: Agnes McBride, Reverend Stone, Dr. Chen, Joseph Two Rivers, even Garrett Cole the Pinkerton watching from the back with unreadable eyes. William Whitfield sat in the front row, hands folded, face calm. They'd all come, every single one. "All rise," the bailiff called. "The Honorable Judge Harold Whitmore presiding." The judge took his seat, shuffled papers, peered out at the crowded room. "This is the matter of custody regarding Grace Margaret Whitfield, minor child, sole heir to the Whitfield estate." He looked at Price. "Mr. Price, you represent the estate's interests." "I do, Your Honor." "And Mr. Harmon." The judge's eyes found Eli. "You're representing yourself." "Yes, sir." "You understand you have the right to legal counsel." "Can't afford it, Your Honor, but I'll speak for myself just fine." Something flickered in the judge's expression. Respect, maybe, or just curiosity. "Very well. Mr. Price, you may present your case." Price stood, buttoned his jacket, launched into a speech Eli had heard before. Legal guardianship, estate responsibilities, the importance of proper education, social standing, financial security. Eli listened without interrupting. Let Price talk himself out. When he finished, the judge turned to Eli. "Mr. Harmon, your response." Eli stood slowly, looked at Grace. She nodded. "Your Honor, I ain't got fancy words or legal arguments. I'm a rancher. Barely finished school. Can't quote laws or precedents or whatever Mr. Price keeps talking about." He paused, gathered himself. "But I can tell you this. 3 months ago, I found that girl half frozen in a snowbank. She'd watched her parents murdered, lost everything she had, and she was ready to die." His voice steadied. "I brought her home, fed her, kept her warm. And somewhere along the way something happened. Something I didn't plan for. I started to love her. Not because she was worth money, not because of some estate, because she's brave and kind and stubborn and smart, because she laughs at my bad cooking, because she visits my wife's grave and talks to her like they're old friends." He looked at the judge directly. "I know I don't have legal standing. I know I'm just some broke rancher with a failing mortgage. But that girl is my daughter, in every way that matters. And I'm asking you not as a judge, but as a man, to let her stay where she belongs." Silence. The judge studied him for a long moment, then turned to Grace. "Miss Whitfield, the court would like to hear from you directly. Do you understand what's happening here today?" Grace stood. Her voice was small but steady. "Yes, sir. You're deciding where I live." "That's correct. And where would you like to live?" "With Mr. Harmon, with my father." "You understand that means giving up considerable wealth, education at the finest schools. A life of privilege most people only dream about." "Yes, sir." "And you're certain this is what you want?" Grace looked at Eli, at Whitfield, at the faces in the gallery who'd come to support them. "When my parents died," she said, "I thought my life was over. I thought I'd never be happy again, never feel safe, never have a family. Her voice grew stronger. Then Mr. Harmon found me. He didn't have to save me. Could have ridden past, left me to die. But he didn't. He brought me home. He taught me that grief doesn't mean you stop living. That love isn't about blood. That family is something you choose. She turned to the judge. I don't want money or mansions or fancy schools. I want a father who loves me. I want a home where I belong. I want to fall asleep knowing someone will be there when I wake up. Her voice cracked. I've already lost everything once. Please don't make me lose it again. The courtroom was silent. Judge Whitmore's face was unreadable. He shuffled papers, made notes, didn't speak. Then Whitfield stood. Your Honor, if I may. The judge looked up. Mr. Whitfield, this is unusual. I know, but I believe my testimony is relevant. Whitfield stepped forward, leaning on his cane. I am William Whitfield, Grace's grandfather, the one who initiated these custody proceedings in the first place. Murmurs in the gallery. Price looked confused. I came here 3 months ago with lawyers and Pinkertons and enough money to buy any outcome I wanted. I was prepared to fight, to take my granddaughter by force if necessary. Whitfield's voice was heavy with shame. But then I met her. And him. He looked at Eli. I saw a man who had lost everything just like me. But instead of becoming bitter, instead of closing himself off from the world, he opened his heart to a child who needed him. He loved her not for what she could give him, but for who she was. Whitfield's voice broke. I spent 15 years pushing away the people who mattered most. My daughter, my granddaughter, everyone who tried to love me. And I ended up alone. Rich and powerful and utterly, completely alone. He turned back to the judge. I'm not here to argue for custody. I'm here to tell you that Elijah Harmon is a better father than I ever was, a better man than I'll ever be. And if this court has any sense of justice, any understanding of what it truly means to care for a child, it will let her stay where she belongs. He sat down heavily. The courtroom was silent. Judge Whitmore removed his spectacles, polished them slowly, put them back on. This is, he said finally, the most unusual custody hearing I have ever presided over. He looked at Price. Mr. Price, your client appears to be arguing against his own petition. Price opened his mouth closed. It shook his head. I have no further arguments, Your Honor. Very well. The judge shuffled his papers one last time. In the matter of Grace Margaret Whitfield, the court finds as follows. Eli held his breath. Grace gripped his hand. It is clear from testimony presented that Miss Whitfield has developed a strong bond with Mr. Harmon. It is equally clear that Mr. Whitfield, despite his initial petition, now supports this arrangement. He paused. However, the law is the law. Mr. Harmon has no legal standing to claim custody. He is not a blood relative. He has not filed for adoption through proper channels. Eli's heart sank. Therefore, Your Honor. A voice from the gallery. Everyone turned. Garrett Cole stood hat in hand. Mr. Cole. The judge frowned. You have something to add. I do, Your Honor. As a representative of the Pinkerton Agency, I have some information relevant to this case. Proceed. Cole walked forward, pulled a paper from his coat. 3 days ago, I received word from our Denver office. A fire at the Hall of Records last year destroyed several documents, including the original custody petition filed by the Whitfield estate. He held up the paper. Without that original document, the current petition has no legal basis. The case should be dismissed. Silence. Then chaos. Price was on his feet. This is outrageous. You can't simply... Mr. Price? The judge's voice was sharp. Is this true? Was the original petition destroyed? Price's face went red, then white. I would need to verify. I can verify it, Your Honor. Cole's voice was calm. I made the trip to Denver myself, saw the records, or rather saw where they used to be. The judge studied Cole for a long moment. And you're certain of this? Absolutely certain. Why bring this forward now? Why not earlier? Cole glanced at Grace, at Eli. Something almost like a smile crossed his scarred face. Because sometimes, Your Honor, justice isn't about what's legal, it's about what's right. The judge leaned back, steepled his fingers, thought. The courtroom waited. Given this new information, Judge Whitmore said slowly, "The court has no choice but to dismiss the petition. Without the original documentation, there is no legal basis for the estate's claim." Grace gasped. Eli couldn't breathe. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "I am recommending that Mr. Harmon initiate formal adoption proceedings at the earliest opportunity. Based on testimony heard today, I see no reason why such a petition would not be granted." He banged his gavel. "Case dismissed." The courtroom erupted. Agnes McBride was crying. Reverend Stone was shaking hands with everyone within reach. Dr. Chen was laughing. Actually laughing, something Eli had never seen before. Grace threw herself into Eli's arms. "We won," she whispered. "We won." "Yeah." Eli's voice was thick. "We did." Whitfield approached them, moving slow face, wet with tears. "Grandfather." Grace reached for him. "You did it. You helped us." "I did what I should have done months ago." He took her hand, pressed it to his cheek. "I'm so proud of you, child. So proud." He looked at Eli. "Take care of her. Always. And let me visit, please. I know I don't deserve your family." Eli extended his hand. "Family visits whenever they want." Whitfield took the hand, held on. "Thank you for everything." Cole appeared beside them, still holding his hat. "Mr. Cole." Eli studied the Pinkerton's scarred face. "That fire at the Hall of Records, pretty convenient timing." Cole's expression didn't change. "Fires happen, papers burn, it's a dangerous world." "There wasn't really a fire, was there? Does it matter?" Eli looked at Grace, at Whitfield, at the crowd of friends surrounding them. "No," he said. "I suppose it doesn't." "Smart man." Cole put on his hat. "Take care of that girl, Mr. Harmon. She's special." "Don't I know it?" Cole tipped his hat, walked out of the courtroom, disappeared into the crowd. Eli never saw him again. The ride home took 2 days. They traveled slow, savoring every mile. Grace sat beside Eli on the wagon seat, pointing out birds, naming wildflowers, talking about everything and nothing. Whitfield followed in his own wagon, Agnes McBride beside him. They'd become unlikely friends over the long winter, bonded by loss and loneliness and the simple need for company. Joseph rode ahead, scouting the trail, but kept circling back to share news, to joke, to be part of something he'd helped build. It felt like a family. Not the kind Eli had lost. That grief would never fully fade. But a new kind. Different. Built from broken pieces that somehow fit together. On the second night, they camped by a creek. Stars overhead, fire crackling, the smell of coffee and wood smoke mixing in the cool air. Grace sat beside Eli, wrapped in his coat. "Father, yeah. Do you think Mama and Samuel would be happy about all this?" Eli looked up at the stars. "I think they'd be proud. Of me. Of both of us." Grace leaned against him. "I wish I could have met them." "Me too." Eli put his arm around her. "But you know what, I think you did meet them. In a way." "What do you mean?" "That embroidery Martha made. The one you keep under your pillow. Every time you touch it, every time you think about it, you're connecting with her. Keeping her alive. And Samuel." "Samuel." Eli's voice caught. Samuel was curious, always asking questions. Why is the sky blue? Where do the stars go during the day? What happens when we die? He smiled. "You remind me of him sometimes. The way you want to understand everything. Grace was quiet for a moment. Maybe that's how it works. When people die, parts of them go into the people they loved. So they're never really gone. Eli's throat tightened. Where'd you learn that? I made it up, just now. She looked up at him. Is it true? I think it might be the truest thing I've ever heard. They sat in silence, watching the fire. Then Grace spoke again. Father? Yeah. I want to visit them, when we get home, Martha and Samuel. I want to bring them flowers, and tell them about the trial and everything that happened. They'd like that. Will you come with me? Wouldn't miss it. She snuggled closer, eyes heavy. I love you, Father. I love you too, my girl. She fell asleep like that, wrapped in his coat, safe in his arms. Eli held her and watched the stars and felt something he'd almost forgotten existed. Peace. They reached the ranch on a Sunday afternoon. Everything was exactly as they'd left it. The cabin, the barn, the cottonwood on the hill. But somehow, it all looked different now. Brighter, more alive. Grace jumped down from the wagon before it stopped moving, ran to the porch, touched the railing, spun around with her arms wide. We're home. Eli climbed down slower, taking it in. The home he'd built with Martha. The grave where his first family rested. The future stretching out before him, uncertain, but no longer empty. You all right? Joseph appeared beside him. Better than all right. Good. Joseph clapped him on the shoulder. You earned this, brother. Don't forget that. Couldn't have done it without you. That's true. I'm very helpful. Joseph grinned. Now go inside. I think your daughter wants to show you something. Eli found Grace in the cabin, standing by the fireplace. She'd taken Martha's embroidery from its hiding place and hung it on the wall, right where everyone could see it. Is this okay? She asked, suddenly uncertain. I thought maybe, if Martha could see. Eli stared at the faded cloth, the crooked stitches, the words that had meant everything once and meant something different now. With love always. It's perfect, he said. Grace smiled, ran to him. He caught her, lifted her, held her close. Welcome home, Father. Welcome home, Grace. Behind them the door opened. Whitfield entered, leaning on his cane, Agnes McBride fussing beside him. Joseph followed, arms full of supplies. The cabin filled with noise, with laughter, with life. And Eli Harmon, who had spent 6 years waiting to die, finally understood what it meant to live. 1 week later, the adoption papers were filed. It was official now. Legal. Grace Margaret Whitfield became Grace Margaret Harmon. Daughter, heir, family. They celebrated at Agnes McBride's boarding house. The whole town came. Reverend Stone said a blessing. Dr. Chen made a toast in broken English that made everyone cry. Even Whitfield managed to give a speech without breaking down. But the best moment came later. After the guests had gone. After Whitfield had returned to his room. After the streets had gone quiet. Eli and Grace walked up the hill together. The cottonwood was in full bloom now, green leaves rustling in the spring breeze. 2 crosses standing in the dappled shade. Grace knelt, placed flowers at the base of each marker. Hello, Martha. Hello, Samuel. Her voice was soft. I'm Grace, your new sister, your new daughter. She looked at Eli. He nodded. I know you can't talk back. But I wanted you to know that I'm going to take care of him. Your husband. Your father. He's been sad for a long time, but he's getting better. I'm helping. She touched Martha's cross gently. I have your embroidery now. The one that says with love always. I keep it where everyone can see it. So they know you're still here. Still part of this family. She stood, brushed off her knees. I'll come back. Every week. And I'll tell you everything that happens. The good stuff and the bad stuff. Just like I'd tell a real mother. She paused. Because that's what you are. even though we never met. You're my mother now. Both of you. The one who gave birth to me, and the one who loved Eli before I came along." She took Eli's hand. "We're all connected, all part of the same family, and nothing, not death, not time, not anything can change that." Eli couldn't speak, couldn't move. Grace looked up at him. "Is that okay? What I said?" He knelt beside her, pulled her close. "It's more than okay. It's everything." They stayed on that hill until the sun started to drop. Two people who had found each other in the darkest of circumstances, who had built something beautiful from the ashes of their grief. When they finally walked back to the cabin hand in hand, Eli looked over his shoulder one last time. The cottonwoods swayed in the evening breeze. The crosses stood peaceful in the fading light. And for just a moment he could have sworn he saw them. Martha and Samuel, standing together under the tree watching him go. Martha smiled, raised her hand in a wave. Samuel waved too, small and eager just like Eli remembered. Then the breeze shifted and they were gone. But Eli didn't feel sad, didn't feel the crushing weight of grief that had followed him for 6 years. He felt grateful for the time he'd had with them, for the love they'd shared, for the daughter they'd somehow led him to. "Father," Grace tugged his hand. "You coming?" "Yeah." Eli smiled. "I'm coming." They walked into the cabin together, father and daughter, chosen family, and the door closed behind them on a story of loss and redemption, of grief and healing of two broken hearts that had found their way back to each other. Some people spend their whole lives searching for where they belong. Eli Harmon had stopped searching 6 years ago, but Grace Harmon had taught him the truth. Home isn't a place you find, it's a place you build. One choice at a time, one day at a time, one love at a time. And in that cabin on the Wyoming frontier, surrounded by mountains and stars, and the memory of everyone they'd lost, Eli and Grace had finally built something worth keeping, a family, a future, a home. A